Well, it's certainly a chilly night in Johannesburg, and it's been a nice, warm, interesting day. And welcome to everyone who's joined us this evening. I hope you can hear me clearly. I've had computer issues this week, and my computer's in for repair, so I'm using a relatively old laptop. But I'm certainly delighted that everyone has joined us this evening. And certainly, we've got a very big crowd of people who are joining us across YouTube, across Zoom, and across Facebook this evening. Gilana is on controls this evening. Gilana, I don't know if you want to wave at everyone or not tonight, but a big welcome to all of you who've joined. It's a very interesting week in South African politics, and I'm so happy that we have Helen Zille tonight rather than on any other night, because, of course, the Constitutional Court on Friday gave a very interesting ruling. So I just want to explain to you what it was like to be there. I don't know if any of you have gone to the Constitutional Court. If not, I absolutely recommend it. You go to Braamfontein, it's kind of Hillbrow, Braamfontein area. The court itself is beautiful, it's magnificent, and it's unusual. The bricks of the court are the bricks of the prison that once stood on that ground. The window at the bottom behind the judges shows just the feet of the people walking past. The reason? The court must be reminded that they're there to protect every South African. It's the common person walking past whose shoes you see as the court deliberates. And of course, the judges come in dressed in their green robes, not very stylish, to be quite honest. But the court itself is kind of modern. It's very minimalistic. It's a little cold, but it doesn't look like one of the usual courts itself. And as you sit there waiting in anticipation, and then a group of judges come forward to deliver the judgment, and the Chief Justice says, we actually have 3 judgments. And you know now this is going to be a bit of a cliffhanger. Not all the judges agree on everything. There's going to be a majority, but they're going to argue and fight on the different things. And the first question is, does the Constitutional Court have jurisdiction and exclusive jurisdiction on the matter? Should it have gone to another court, or should it have gone to the Constitutional Court? And the second issue is, if it should have gone to the Constitutional Court, does the court itself have jurisdiction over Parliament? We have 3 legs of government. We have the legislature, we have the judiciary, we've got the administrative branch. Does the court have the right to tell the legislature how to behave itself? And so by a majority, they declare that in fact the court has jurisdiction over the matter, that it has exclusive jurisdiction over the matter, and that Parliament erred when the ANC majority in Parliament blocked an inquiry, a impeachment inquiry into the president. It was one of those moments of South African history, and just to be there to watch it all taking place was absolutely fantastic. So why do I say I'm so happy that we have Helen Zille on tonight's broadcast rather than any other night? Because we get to ask her those amazing questions, and questions about, what do you think of the Constitutional Court judgment? What do you think of the future of the president? How will the DA behave? You know, when Helen was leader of the party, as chairperson of the federal executive, it's quite difficult to speak. Now she holds no leadership position in the party at all. And that's why we're so excited that we'll be able to ask her so many of those questions this evening. We're going to have a very large audience. Please tell people if they're unable to get onto Zoom. We're broadcasting as well on YouTube and Facebook. But also we want you to be able to ask the questions. So whether you're watching us on Facebook or on YouTube, or we tried on Instagram or on Zoom, please remember we have a questions, a chat section. You can use that at any point in time, and we'll make sure, and Gilana will make sure, that we bring all of the questions over, we bring all of those questions through, and we put all of your questions to the mayoral candidate from the DA for Johannesburg. I see we have people who are watching us all over the world, and Demetrius says he hasn't actually watched us since the time of COVID. Well, Dimitri, we have done, this is in fact our 194th broadcast, and we've continued to broadcast in the post-COVID era, and it's so nice to have you back this evening. And we're being joined by people who are watching us in South Africa, and more importantly, people around the world. So if you're watching us, no matter where you're watching us from, and on what platform you're watching us, we'd love to actually hear from you. So please put into the chat section. Let us know where you're watching from. I see Clive Chitters is watching us from Renana. Clive, fantastic to see you on. Joburg Hofmeyer is in Constantia, and we have Dimitri. Tell us where you're watching us from. Shalom out of Tel Aviv says Megan Kotzen. Great to have you, and I'm sure you're appreciating the fact that you're getting a few nights of decent sleep with a ceasefire. And Estelle is watching us from Waverley. Karen is watching us from Rouville, so just around the corner. I don't know if any of you were there, but I was at the Marble Family Circus today in the James and Ethel Gray Park. What a fantastic event it was. In the forests, to be able to see acrobats, to have carousels busy swirling around, to see the big wheel, to have kids entertainment. It was just such a special day. And it's the sort of thing that I think every city actually needs to make sure that we have a vibrant city. And also this week opening, if you haven't been to it, is 9 Yards, where the old Keith Kirstens used to be. I'm sure many people remember Keith Kirstens, even though it hasn't been Keith Kirstens for many, many years. But go to 9 Yards if you haven't been to 9 Yards and have a walk around the place. The place is magnificent. Helen, I believe we are both walking around the James and Ethel Gray Park this afternoon. I just didn't see you.
Yes, we were. It was wonderful, wasn't it?
It was, I was just saying to everyone says there's nothing to do in Johannesburg, and seeing
They're
we don't
mad.
have an ocean and a beach for people to go to, but we've got vibe, and there were DJs playing, and there were acrobats performing, and there were storytellers telling stories, and there was a big Ferris wheel and a double story carousel. It was absolutely fantastic. And it's a partnership, of course, between the Residents Association and the city of Johannesburg. It shows you what can happen when people actually work together.
Absolutely. And it was also a partnership with a marble restaurant and a whole lot of other people. But it was just brilliant. Brilliant. And the nice thing about Joburg is there's always something to do. You know, yesterday I was at the Field and Study market, which was also delightful. And going around there, there were so many things and so many people to meet and so much innovation. It was really, really great. I spent far too much money, but nevertheless, I loved it. And every weekend there's something. Every weekend there's something. There's a Linden market, there's a vegan market, there's everything.
So can I tell you what, like, I'm really excited about this week? The new 9 Yards opens officially. I don't know if you've been to 9 Yards, where
I've
Keith
been to
Kirsten used
Nine
to,
Yards twice already. It's
and
absolutely wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Mark Lubner took me there.
it's an amazing experience for those people who haven't gone. You can wander around the nursery that once was Keith Kirsten's and is now Garden World, but their restaurants, their coffee shops, their clothing shops, furniture shops, and the official
Art
opening is
galleries.
art galleries. And I did something recently that I absolutely loved. And we always do a pre-chat before we go live in about 3 minutes, but we have hundreds of people watching us already on Zoom and on Facebook
Oh,
and on
great.
YouTube. But one of the amazing things I did was a street food tour in Fordsburg.
Now that must have been brilliant.
And we went to about 12 little kiosks, and we had burfi, and we had Indian desserts, and we had fresh mango juice, and just into dosa hut to have dosa and idli and chicken curry. Absolutely fantastic experience. And we often don't take advantage of the amazing cultural diversity that South Africa has.
It's wonderful. It really is wonderful. I so love being back in Joburg. I can't tell you. It's a completely different vibe. And the can-do people there, obviously exemplified at the James and Ethel Gray Park today, with the what's it, marvelous marble or magical marble family festival. It was fabulous.
It was big. But you know what also struck me? The audience there was so diverse. And and when you think about it, there were people of every ethnicity, every race, every color, every social strata, all together. We actually get along as a nation,
Of
despite
course
what
we
our
do.
politicians say.
Well, you see, the thing is that politicians aren't there to divide people. They're there to put different choices of solutions to people. I know that lots of politicians try to mobilize on an ethnic and identity basis. We don't believe that's politics. We believe that's populism. We try and win support on a vision for South Africa and how it can work and a set of policies that can make it work. And that is something that should attract people of every ethnicity, every single background, because I truly believe it's the only way that South Africa can work. But, parties obviously do mobilize on race. The ANC's only ever had to do that so far. So it's going to get a big fright when it sees that it doesn't work so well anymore. And the PA does that, but, the lifespan of that is going to be short as well, although not short enough. And so we'll continue.
Well, Helen, the time has just gone 7 p.m. and a big welcome to everyone who's watching us across the world on Zoom, on YouTube, and on Facebook. We've had a huge number of people who've registered for this evening. So a big welcome to all of you. And please remember, this isn't a conversation between Helen and myself. This is a conversation with you. So you have a chat section on YouTube, on Zoom and Facebook. Use it, ask questions, and we'll make sure that Gilana, who's on controls this evening, will bring all of those questions across. And let's also ask the difficult questions. We want to make sure that we actually get down to the basics and the truth, and it's going to be a very frank, honest discussion. But most importantly, we want to get to know the real Helen Zille. We see you on TV, we see you sitting in potholes, we see you rowing down the streets of Soweto, but we want to know who you actually are. We want to get to know you as a person. You'll see if you look into the chat section that we have people watching us. I see from Palm Beach in Florida, from Israel, from the United Kingdom. We have people watching us from around the world, and a big welcome to all of you. Before we begin, don't forget this is the 194th webinar that has been brought to you by the South African Jewish Report. And we undertook at the beginning of COVID to educate, inform, and entertain all of South Africa. And so please don't forget, you can go and pick up your hard copy of the newspaper, the SA Jewish Report. You can go and pick up a hard copy around the country. And Gilana is going to show us what's on the front page this week. It's always, as always, a very interesting discussion. That's not what we want to see, but let's go back one more. UN Health Advisor takes on the flotilla activist side. I believe they've been released already, so nothing to see there. And also a front page picture of some of the Lag BaOmer celebrations that happened. You can go and pick up your hard copy at your local Dis-Chem, at Pick and Pay, at Checkers, at Kosher World, all over the place. Gilana, you're going much too fast. I'll tell you when to flip. But also don't forget that not only our hard copy, but our digital copy, you can download from our website. Gilana, please go back to our website. Okay, you can go to sajr.co.za. You can either download the full edition or you can read the individual articles. About 280,000 people go and read us online every single month. So please feel free to go do that if you haven't picked up your hard copy edition as well. Don't forget as well that we have a newsletter. In fact, 3 digital newsletters that go out every week to about 38,000 people. So about 120,000 emails get sent out a week. And if you aren't subscribing, you should subscribe, because there's a lot more on our digital newsletter than there is in our hard copy edition. So you can use a bit.ly link, SAJR inbox, and we'll send you the news directly into your inbox. Don't forget as well that this recording of tonight's broadcast, as well as all of our other broadcasts, are available online. You can either go onto YouTube or onto the Jewish Report website, sajr.co.za, and click on the webinar button as well. And the last thing Gilana wants to show us is, if you want to pick up a hard copy edition and you haven't yet, and I had a call this evening from someone who's just arrived from the UK and she hadn't picked up a hard copy edition, and she said, where can I find one? Well, the honest answer is they go really, really quickly. So I hope you'll still be able to find one. But go to Kosher World, Checkers, Exclusive Books, Dis-Chem, Pick and Pay, Spar, Checkers, Dry Cleaners, Thrups. Go to your local school, butchery, kosher bakery. They're everywhere, distributed free of charge in about 240 locations around the country. As I say, this is a conversation between you and Helen Zille this evening, so please feel free to ask any questions, anything you want answered on the chat section on Zoom, Facebook, on YouTube. So Helen Zille, you know, on Passover we say, why is tonight different to every other night?
Yes, I know that.
And we're delighted that you're on tonight rather than any other night, because Friday was a dramatic day in South African history. I was there sitting at the Constitutional Court as judgment was given, and our Constitutional Court said that Parliament acted unlawfully and unconstitutionally in not conducting impeachment hearings into the president. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter.
Well, the Constitutional Court has spoken, and it is an inflection point for South Africa. And it depends on what the ANC and the president decide to do. As far as I see it, President Ramaphosa has three options. Number one, he can take up the challenge that he was going to take legally against the Judge Noble report, which resulted in the situation. You'll recall that the former speaker, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, appointed Justice Noble, the former Chief Justice, to investigate whether the president had a case to answer. And Noble came back and said, yes, he did have a case to answer. And then there was a debate in Parliament as to whether they should move to an impeachment hearing. Now, the South African Reserve Bank and the South African Revenue Service had both given the president a clean bill of health, because you can remember that the issue was, had exchange control regulations been violated? Had the law in any other way, the tax laws, been violated? They said no. There was a big debate in Parliament, and every single parliamentarian had to vote individually, get up and say yes or no. And the majority voted that they would not go to an impeachment hearing. The EFF then took it to the Constitutional Court because they said it had constitutional implications, and the Constitutional Court found for the EFF. But before that, President Ramaphosa had been very angered by the Noble report, which he said was fundamentally legally flawed. So he was going to challenge it in court and take it on review. But after Parliament voted in the way they did, then Cyril Ramaphosa left it, but at the time he left it with the express condition that if events warranted it, he may take it up at a later stage. So that's his first option, to take up his legal challenge against the initial Noble report. His second option is to go through the impeachment hearing and fight it all the way. He's not a fighter by inclination, but speaking to people yesterday who are very close to Cyril, they said he currently intends to fight. Whether that intention will remain, I don't know. And his third option is to resign. Those are the three options that he faces. And it depends what he has stomach for and what his legal advisors advise.
We've seen a few impeachment inquiries in Parliament. We saw the public protector. They're very bruising. And he would have to face off against Julius Malema, or maybe some of the DA members of Parliament as well because of it. Do you think he has the stomach to sit there and have Malema cross-examine him?
Well, that is what the implication is going to be if he goes through the process. So, for example, the DA will also, be rigorous and cross-examine. And whatever the story is about so many dollar bills residing in your couch, it can't be a very pretty story. There's obviously something beneath that isn't going to reflect very well on the president. So whether he has the stomach to do that, I don't know. You'll know that obviously lying to Parliament and lying to an impeachment hearing is a very, very serious offence, and he would be immediately impeached if he did that. But Arthur Fraser and the people who were behind leaking it in the first place know the full story. So his biggest opponents know the full story, but he will never know how much they know, which makes it incredibly difficult to defend yourself in those circumstances. The only way out is to tell the full and honest truth.
If you were going to place a bet on Polymarket and predict whether Cyril Ramaphosa would still be our president in 6 months or 12 months, what do you think the odds are?
Well, if he picks up his challenge against the Noble report, the odds are good that he'll still be here. If his lawyers tell him, you haven't got a case with the Noble report anymore because of the Constitutional Court judgment, which I don't think should affect the challenge to the Noble report, but nevertheless, if he doesn't go that route and he goes for the fight I'm sure that fight will drag for a while. Whether it will drag for 6 months, I'm not sure, but it will be a spectacle before the election in November, which I'm sure is another thing that the ANC wants to avoid. But if he were to resign because he can't face going through all of that, well, then he won't be here. So it depends which option he chooses. And at the moment, really, it's very difficult to determine which one he will choose. I mean, there isn't a good option for him. He's got to take the least bad option. And if I were him, I would resurrect the challenge to the Noble report because, time is on your side in these things. In the short term, he's got to lead an election strategy. And what will give him more time is dragging this issue through the courts. I'm just being very objective here in terms of winning time. I think time is on his side. I think the best strategy to win time is to go and get the Noble reviewed. And the rest are full-blown inflection points right there. So if he goes for the impeachment hearing, he's going to be grilled on a public platform. And it's going to be front page news and headline TV news and dominate the social media for however long it takes. And I don't know if the ANC can stomach that going into an election. And then if the president resigns, well, then you know that Paul Mashatile becomes the acting president at least for a while, and then it goes back to Parliament for a vote. So, those are very grim options in an election year for the ANC.
Is the DA in a difficult position because it's a partner of the ANC in the government of national unity? And if this does come down to a vote of either impeachment or alternatively maybe a motion of no confidence in the president, is the DA in fact really conflicted here?
Look, we have to do what is right and we have to stand by the law. Now, this is the devil in the deep blue sea option because we went into the coalition in the first place to avoid a situation where the ANC would go into coalition with the EFF and MK. Excuse me. That was the doomsday scenario. That would have been absolutely disastrous for South Africa. And although we didn't get everything we wanted, the truth is that we didn't have an alternative to a negotiated settlement except to go back into opposition. The ANC had an alternative. They had us or the EFF MK. They were in a stronger position because they had two options that they could go for, and they were very split down the middle. So we were determined to prevent the ANC MK EFF model, and we were glad that the senior leadership in the ANC went for a coalition with us. But it did weaken our hand that our only alternative was to be in opposition. So we went for that. We did not do a motion of no confidence when they wanted to at the time, but we were very clear that if evidence of unconstitutionality and illegality were to be placed on the table, then we would have to reconsider our position. So I think what the EFF and MK would like is to drag this out in an impeachment hearing for a long time, but then not to go to impeachment, just to go to a motion of no confidence. Because with impeachment, you need a 2/3 majority, but for a vote of no confidence, you just need 50% plus one, which they could easily get in the current circumstances, because the ANC has a minority at the moment in Parliament.
Wouldn't it shake things up amazingly if you went to Nkandla for tea?
If we went to where?
Nkandla for tea.
We went to Nkandla for tea.
He's a very amenable man, and I'm sure he'll give you fantastic tea and biscuits. But you wouldn't be the only politician who's gone to see the old man in Nkandla. And in fact, Cyril last week was in Swaziland with him. It really may increase the options of the DA.
Well, I don't think so. I don't think we could ever do a deal with Jacob Zuma. As affable and as pleasant and as charming as he is, he's certainly not a constitutionalist. And it's impossible, I have learned, to go into a coalition with people who don't share a single one of your values.
So let's talk about the other big issue in the news at the moment, and then we'll begin where we wanted to begin. But there's so much happening in South
Yeah,
African politics that
yeah,
that it feels like we should address those issues first before we get on
yeah.
to your race for Johannesburg. But the other important issue was the xenophobic or Afrophobic violence that we've seen right around the country. We've seen it in Johannesburg, in Tshwane, in eThekwini. We've seen foreigners running for their lives. Is there a position on that we should know?
Well, our position again is the rule of law. What we're saying is that in every country, anywhere in the world, if you're going to be somewhere, you've got to be there legally. And people who are not here legally must legalize themselves or leave. I mean, that is the position everywhere. And the new white paper is a very good one that Minister Schreiber has released. And it's very simple. I mean, he's done wonders to police the borders much more effectively using technology, the most modern technology. And a lot of border crossings over the last Christmas period were prevented. And he's also repatriated 109,000 people who were illegally in South Africa, hadn't made any claim for refugee status, and were just here without any papers at all. And that's also fair and right in terms of the rule of law. I mean, it's absolutely impossible in South Africa, Howard, to think of a situation where we are the only country in Africa that has a rudimentary welfare system, where there is enormous corruption. And that combination makes it easy for anybody to cross the border, to come here, to get forged papers, and then to claim all kinds of welfare grants and free education for their children. And I can tell you that on the ground, that has a very negative impact on ordinary people. They go to the clinic, and there always was a queue, but now it's an impossible queue. They go to their schools, and there's several cases where people can't get into the schools. And you can understand the anger rising when people say, we depend on state institutions, but those state institutions are available now to so many people that we can't get the services and the education and the healthcare that we need. So we are insulated from it. You know, we can pontificate from our ivory towers, but the people on the ground are not insulated from it. And the big difference between our position and their position is that we're not xenophobic. We don't hate foreigners. We don't hate foreigners. But we do say every country in the world has an immigration policy, and it's based on skills and value add to the society, and then genuine refugee status if your life is in danger from where you come. There's also the very important concept of the first safe country, which is if you're fleeing for your life, you can't pick and choose anywhere in the world that you want to go to. You go to the first safe country, and the rest of the world tries to support that first safe country in dealing with refugees. So there are all these concepts that are around, and they are now incorporated in the white paper that Leon Schreiber has put together. It's the first comprehensive white paper in South Africa's democratic history, and I think it's a very good one.
But we do have to stop the vigilantism.
Oh,
That has to
absolutely.
be.
We have to stop the xenophobia and the vigilantism. No question about that. But we also have to apply the rule of law. And the rule of law works against illegal migration, and it works against vigilantism and violence.
So, Helen, now let's get back right to the beginning where we wanted to start. If you were to say there are three things that people should know about you to make you understand who you are and what has really created the Helen Zille that we see in the public profile, what do you think those three key things are?
Well, the first thing is that I'm a child of my parents. Now, that's obvious, but it really shaped me. My parents were refugees, and they raised us. We were very poor, certainly during my primary school years, until my father's business started succeeding. And they raised us with very solid and firm values. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. They never shied away from politics. They always discussed it in depth. And I got to understand some very important concepts from when I was a tiny kid. I remember my mother discussing things like the Magna Carta and the importance of it when I was a young kid, and I was really fascinated by it because she used to explain all these things to me. And it so they raised me with a certain set of values, which meant that I didn't fit in very well in my schools or the society that I was in more broadly, because my parents had a very different worldview from the white South Africa of the day. So that's the number one. Number two, I suppose your struggles always shape you, and I've had my fair share. And that's taught me a lot of perseverance. And I suppose my superpower is perseverance. I can keep going and going and going no matter what the odds are against me. So that I'd say the second one. And then the third one is my own family, my husband and my sons and my daughters-in-law, and especially my grandchildren. So those are the most shaping things. And today, my motivation to keep on keeping on is my grandchildren. I don't want them to leave South Africa. I want everyone's grandchildren to have prospects in South Africa. And we've got to make it the country that people want to be in.
So, Helen, one of the things that you said is you were never sure that your husband voted for the DA, and you're still not sure that he votes for you. Tell
I'm
us,
sure he
tell us
does now.
about that.
Well, my husband was very involved in the trade union movement, and he was quite radical. And I've always been a liberal, I've always been a classical liberal. So I met my husband, and he was a Marxist. And the first discussion we had at a party, we had a very deep disagreement around economics. And I thought, well, this is, move on. And a couple of nights later, he phoned me and he said, would you like to carry on the conversation? So I said, yeah. And so then we did, and we haven't stopped having that conversation ever since. We got married about 18 months later, and it's taken me a very, very long time to bring him round to the understanding of liberal democracy and market economics, but I did eventually do that. He voted for the ANC in 1994. I voted for the DP in 1994. I'm proud to say that I never voted for the Nats and I never voted for the ANC. But he did. And I was standing in 1999 after I'd had a huge fight with the trade union movement around education. I don't know if anybody remembers the Big Grove Primary School case, where I led 80 schools into fighting with the government's violation of its own new education law. And the unions were phoning my husband for advice the whole time, and I was fighting the unions. So that was an interesting time in our marriage. But nevertheless, and then I stood in 1999 as a candidate, and I said to him, are you going to vote for me? And he said, my vote's my secret. So I said, some secret. If I lose by one vote, you've had it, mate. So, but I now know that he does vote for the DA. Yeah.
So, Helen, take us through as well, because your background as a journalist and as an activist is as an anti-apartheid activist and involvement in the Black Sash. Tell us a little about those experiences.
Well, my mother was very involved in the Black Sash, and from early days, she used to work in the Black Sash Advice Office. And she used to come home with these horrific stories. So obviously that conscientized me, as the saying goes. My father was building a business, so he was much more low key, but he had been a member of the Springbok Legion all those years ago and followed Sailor Milan, and he was a great fan of Sailor Milan back in the day. So both my parents were highly politicized in the sense of analyzing what was going on in society. My father used to read newspapers, and he got me reading them from a very young age, which was very good. And going to school, we had to drive a long way to school, and he always used to buy the Rand Daily Mail at the street corner and make me read it to him in the car. So I'd have to read the front page and then summarize it for him and then tell him what was going on. And I remember the gold standard was a big issue in the time, and all of these things. I learned a hell of a lot from those drives to school. In fact, I think I learned more from the drives to school than I did at school. And my father used to discuss things with me, and, he used to say, well, I got so into it that it was like reading a serial. I couldn't wait for the next day's newspaper to come in to see what had happened next, because there wasn't anything like social media there or anything at the time. So that's how my interests grew and developed. But what was your question? I've got to get back to the question, Howie.
So I wanted to know about your involvement in Black Sash, anti-apartheid
Yeah,
movement, and as a journalist.
yeah. So then I read all these things all the time, and I did a degree at university, and then I wanted to be a journalist myself. And then I applied to the South African Associated Newspapers cadet course, and miracle upon miracle, I got in. I was the only woman that got in. And I think it was because of my background of really understanding current affairs, which was a love instilled in me by my father. And then I gravitated very strongly towards politics. And then I went around with the political reporter, Anthony Holliday, and went to all the major stories and learned a lot from him. Yeah, so
So, Helen, should we say you're approaching 70, but we're not going to say from which direction?
yeah.
And you're standing as
Time
mayor of
doesn't work
Johannesburg.
backwards, Howie.
You know something, I was giving you the benefit of the doubt there. But at this stage in your life, you've decided to run for mayor of Johannesburg. Why
Yes.
do you need this crap in your life?
It's not crap to me. It's a mission, it's a purpose. We got to get Joburg right. We've just got to get Joburg right. And that's why I'm doing it.
So you've had an illustrious career. You've been a premier, you've been a mayor, you've been in parliament. What is it about Johannesburg that makes you believe it's capable of being actually saved?
Well, I know this sounds like a cliche, but the people. I mean, you and I had a little chat at the beginning about the events at every weekend. From a dragon boat race, I went to a huge dragon boat race. It's stunning. I mean, for every problem there is in Joburg, Howard, there's someone fixing that problem. Whether it's shot hole borer that's getting the trees, whether it's the potholes in the road, whatever, there's a group of people fixing it. And it's that spirit that is really going to get Joburg through. And I love being part of it.
How much power does a mayor actually have? You were mayor of Cape Town, but in essence, your party controlled the administration. In Johannesburg, it looks a little different. When you
Our
come in as
party did.
mayor, you find an infrastructure that is riddled with political appointees everywhere. Does the mayor have genuine power to change things?
How would you right in pointing to the deep differences between Cape Town and Joburg? Although in Cape Town, they had a professional civil service. So that was good. The ANC hadn't been in power too long in Cape Town when we took over in 2006. So the place hadn't been stripped yet. It was in the process of being, and a lot of people had been ensconced in key positions. And the city manager was certainly driving his agenda with Mr. 10% and various other people. But what we could do there was delve into various processes that seemed very inconsistent with the law to us. And then we found legal violations that enabled us to take to disciplinary actions and then terminate people. So we were able to do that. I think in Johannesburg, it's a completely different story. I mean, Johannesburg has been captured by various syndicates, corrupt syndicates. It's very important to know that corruption in Joburg is syndicated. And that's going to be a completely different story. The one good thing about Joburg, which few people realize, is that the entities could be a saving grace. The mayor has enormous power, but most specifically over the entities. And an enormous amount can be done in appointing new boards, in ensuring that they become vehicles for real expertise and professionalism. And that is one of the ways that I would go. The second saving grace is that Operation Vulindlela in the presidency, which is very determined to turn around the syndicated corruption in Johannesburg, is keen to work with us and is offering big incentives for doing things like ring fencing funding, which I would definitely do, ring fence funding for water, for electricity, for refuse removal, and the other trading services, and turn them into public-private partnerships. So I would do all of those things, which I would be empowered to do. It's bureaucratic. You can't do it overnight. You have to go through all kinds of legal hoops, but you can do it. and it won't be fixed overnight, but I will relentlessly pursue progress one day at a time.
So let's talk a little about what the state of Johannesburg looks like. You released last week a letter from the Minister of Finance through to Dada Moreira, the Mayor of Johannesburg, saying Johannesburg is bankrupt, and his response is, we've got the lights on, we're not bankrupt. Tell us, let's start with the financial state of the city. What does it look like?
It's deeply, deeply concerning, to put it mildly. Joburg, at the time of the letter that was written by the minister, had 25 billion rand in debt and had 3.9 billion in cash and cash equivalents. On top of that, they decided to give a politically facilitated agreement wage increase costing 10.3 billion rand to the South African Municipal Workers Union, knowing that that was unfunded and it was not in the budget. Then they'd gone quickly to the French Development Agency to get a loan, which they'd got there before. They wanted 2.5 billion rand, and the French Development Agency said, no, we're not giving you any more money because you didn't use the last loan for the purposes for which it was intended. So they say they're going to borrow money for infrastructure, and then they use it for other things like salaries, which you can't do. Then the Auditor General hasn't yet, as far as I'm aware, signed off on the audit statement, which is very serious, which resulted in the suspension of Johannesburg's bonds on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, no less. So the indicators are horrific, and that is what's led Moody's to say you can expect a downgrade. Now, at exactly this point where South Africa is turning the corner in terms of the ratings agencies, Joburg is going backwards. And that's a very, very serious thing for Joburg. And the minister didn't mince his words. He says your budgets are unfunded. You overestimate your revenue flows and you underestimate your expenditure. You can't even budget properly. And so the finance minister was furious and said, if you continue with a 10.3 billion rand wage increase for SAMWU, he would withhold the equitable share formula, which is between 8 and 9 billion rand from Johannesburg, which will be catastrophe. And yep, that's as serious as it is. It couldn't be more serious, put it that way.
Let's run through maybe some of the other views of Johannesburg. How are we doing on things like water and the other services that the municipality is supposed to be supplying to its citizens?
Well, if you've got no money and you've got no expertise, you know what the consequence is going to be, right? So at the moment, the money comes in for water. It gets swept right out of the water account instantly, and it goes into a general account. And then from the general account, they hand bits and pieces back to Joburg Water, which is not nearly enough. And there are a whole lot of projects that aren't the core mandate of local government that get funded. And that is a massive problem. So I have some sympathy for Joburg Water and no, not City Power so much. I do think that Joburg Water is a better entity, ironically, despite the fact that there's been such a terrible crisis with the water. But, that's because they don't make resources available and they aren't adequately staffed and they haven't got the expertise and all of that sort of thing. So we've got to get that money ring-fenced, but the water situation is critical. I mean, there are 22 water systems in Joburg that are on their last legs. One is Hurst Hill, which services the area that I'm in. One is the South Joburg one. The other is the Alex Berea one. The other is the Midrand one. Ironically, the Midrand one is relatively new, but because there's been such huge development in the area, it can't cope. The infrastructure can't cope. So those are the ones that are literally on their last legs, and there are 22 others at the same time. There are water leaks all the time. Leaks are repaired for a little while, and then because it's done with chewing gum and sticky tape, it bursts open immediately. And that is because there's been no maintenance for 30 years. One thing about the ANC is they just don't do maintenance. Wherever they are, they just don't do maintenance. And so if you don't maintain things routinely for 30 years, everything collapses at the same time. And that's what's happening now. In Cape Town, they just solidly go on, and every year there's routine maintenance. And last year they replaced 140 kilometers of water pipe. And if you do that every year and every year and every year, you don't end up with a crisis. But if you don't repair any water pipes for 30 years, then suddenly they all break at the same time, and you haven't got money to fix them. That is where we stand. Electricity is even worse. City Power is in the red by 16 billion rand. They are supposed to be the cash cow of Joburg, but they've become a liability to Joburg. Joburg has to bail them out the whole time, like they had to bail Eskom and Transnet and South African Airways out. So that's the problem there. It's a disaster area.
So, Helen, when you look at all of this, one of the things that actually surprised me a little was you did a 3-part series on the actual city council, the municipal building, which hasn't been into for years, is actually derelict. Why can't we even maintain our own municipal building?
Well, Howie, you've got to understand the ANC. Every project that the ANC ever undertakes is designed to make senior ANC people and their contacts rich. If you understand that, then you'll understand a lot about what the ANC does. So, with the Metro Centre, there was a lot of maintenance that needed to be done. Well, routinely. I mean, our Metro Centre in Cape Town was built at the same time as the Joburg Metro Centre. They were all roughly built in the same era. So you need to maintain buildings if you've got a building, right? And then there was a report in about 2013, I think, around about there, that there was some major maintenance needed. Of course. And then they spotted the opportunity through the Johannesburg Property Company, which is probably the most corrupt of all the entities, because property transactions are the easiest ones to launder money through. And they saw a massive opportunity to make a lot of money because of the Metro Centre. So instead of fixing up the Metro Centre, which they could have done, they looked for somebody to say this building has to be condemned. And they first got an engineer in who said there's major maintenance, but it certainly doesn't have to be condemned. And then they got the Department of Employment and Labour in who said exactly the same thing. But for some reason, they evacuated the entire building, which gave them the opportunity to put about 2,000 to 3,000 employees in different rented buildings across Joburg, many of them which are even in worse repair than the Metro Centre. But it's a fantastic opportunity for people to let their buildings to the city council. And you know what happens in the background when they do that? Then everyone gets a share of the spoils, right? Then the Metro Centre was evacuated. No maintenance has ever taken place. I have no doubt they're waiting for it to fall apart completely because they want to demolish it. And the way to get most money out of the city for the Metro Centre is to demolish it and build a whole new shining thing on the hill that they now want to do. And there's no money to do it. So they've got this big white elephant that is decaying. They refuse to let anyone do oversight in it, even though it is a public asset funded by public money. And we said no, and we tried to go in and they stopped us. So eventually we got in, you know. I mean, perseverance, as I say, is my middle name. We found a way to get in and we filmed all of that and we showed, but I'm just wait till the next thing comes. I mean, the amount of bribery and skullduggery that's happened there is just unbelievable.
So, Helen, should you win, what will be your priorities as mayor?
Well, my priorities have to be the basic constitutional things, Howie. We've got to get the water flowing, clean water to everyone. We've got to get reliable electricity to everybody. We've got to fix the roads. We've got to recreate confidence in Joburg so that businesses start investing here and don't go elsewhere, that they have some kind of hope in the future here. That's the key. We have to clean up the place and make safe, open public spaces. And we have to just professionalize the whole enterprise.
So, Helen, one of the things that I do on a Monday evening, I often do political commentary on Power FM.
Yeah.
And we've discussed you a lot.
Oh,
And
boy.
and the one thing when we talk about the track record of the DA in Cape Town, the one thing that's the consistent feedback that comes through is many callers who call in say, yes, but it's only for the rich areas. If you go to the poorer areas in Cape Town, the track record of the DA is nowhere near as good as it is that they've looked after rich and white rather than the people. I want to give you the opportunity to actually address that issue.
It's so 100% wrong. We've looked after Khayelitsha 1,000 times more than we've looked after Camps Bay. In fact, Camps Bay looks like Camps Bay because of the people of Camps Bay. They are well-to-do, they look after their place, and they've invested a hell of a lot there. Of course, people in Khayelitsha can't do the same thing because they're desperately poor. What we're facing in South Africa is primary urbanization. People moving in very large numbers for the first time into the cities. And while they could live a subsistence lifestyle, where they come from very often in the Eastern Cape, you can't live a subsistence lifestyle in the city. There it's raw, naked poverty. And people come in literally with the clothes on their back. They're lucky if they know somebody from their village or whatever. And Khayelitsha is, it's about 30 years old, if I recall correctly. So, and it's a bit older than that, but it's very young, very, very young is Khayelitsha. Now, we've built a state-of-the-art hospital there. We've got everybody there gets access to clean water, to electricity. There are sports facilities, schools, clinics, everything the state is supposed to provide. There is really good refuse removal, unlike all these places that I see in Joburg, which has won a world award, the refuse removal systems that we have in informal settlements in Cape Town. We deliver services there, and over the next 3 years, we are going to be investing 40 billion rand into infrastructure in the most rapidly growing areas of Cape Town, 2/3 of which, or 3/4 of which, in fact, are in the poorest areas. We all have the legacy of the past. We all have the situation, every city has the situation of primary urbanization and mass poverty coming into the core of a first world economy. It's a massive challenge to deal with. The question is not, are some places still poor in Cape Town? Of course they are. But the question is, where is the most progress being made in South Africa for the poor? And all the statistics show you unequivocally, Howie, where that is. For example, unemployment in the Western Cape is now 18%. In the rest of the country, it's 34%. Surely that tells you something. Absolute poverty in Cape Town is down from 33% when I became mayor, to 18% today. I mean, surely that's where we want to go, bring down absolute poverty. We've got a huge booming tourism industry. We had 11 million visitors to Cape Town over this last tourist season. For every 7 visitors, it creates a permanent job. If you look, despite the literally hundreds of thousands of people who've moved in since the DA took power 20 years ago, we've kept up with service delivery to the point that all basic services delivered to people are in the high 90%, according to the Census and Statistics South Africa. Just compare that to any other city. Compare the value of the free basic services people get. Compare, today I read a story in the Sunday Times. In every city except Cape Town, the bus rapid transit system has collapsed. I mean, every single indicator tells you where poor people are improving their lives. And the only place that they are is Cape Town, of the major cities.
So, Singui, dealing with criticism, I want to throw out the other criticism that people have of
bring it on.
the DA. And that is, people say it's a whites-only party. And I was privileged as a journalist. I went to your Congress a few weeks ago. And to be quite honest, when we had coffee a few months ago and I said, the DA is not really my sort of party. It seems like a whites-only party. And you said what I thought was the best line I'd ever heard. And you said, you don't have to like me. You don't have to like my party. All you have to do is love Johannesburg. But then I went to your Congress, and it wasn't a whites-only party. In fact, was the
Well, it has
furthest
been for
thing
years.
from.
Wake
So
up, Howie. Have you been living under a rock, man?
well, I do look at your old leadership, which in the top 10 positions had 7 whites, 1 colored, 1 black, 1 Indian. But I do see a transformation happening, and I don't think it's been complete. But you do see white leadership of the party, but you see an emergence of strong black candidates coming through. And I want you to talk through, to give the opportunity to people to listen to say, you've heard the criticism. What's the reality that exists today?
Okay, well, the reality exists today is that we don't do identity politics. We pick people for positions because they can do the job very well. And all of us, black, white, colored, Indian, have that same political philosophy, which is why you can have a majority black Congress, as that was, electing Jordan Hill-Lewis to be the leader. That is why every one of those people elected on a free and fair ticket was elected on the basis of the majority's perception that they would be best at the job. We've learned very, very hard from history that being able to do the job and being a good leader is much more important than the color of your skin. The color of your skin is a tiny, tiny, tiny function of you. And leading a political party, Howard, is harder than most people will ever know. It is enormously complex, especially in our society and especially in our context with our history. And if you're trying to build the basis of a party that believes that individuals are the core units of value in the society, that people must be judged for who they are rather than the color of their skin, and you want to stand firm by that in a race-obsessed society, it is very, very difficult. But the plus side of that is that you attract people of all races who believe in that philosophy. And we come together on the basis of shared values, which is a key binding force, much more important than the color of your skin, which is no binding force at all.
So I want to talk about the SRF poll, because there was a very interesting stat within the SRF poll. And they said of black people in Johannesburg, 75% of them believed that the DA would do a much better job than the ANC. But only 25% of them said they would vote DA. Now, can you explain, in a world where you believe identity politics doesn't exist or shouldn't exist, why people would vote against their own best interests? And do you think that stat that 25% of black people in Johannesburg will vote for you is an accurate figure?
Well, if 25% of black South Africans vote for us in Johannesburg, hallelujah, we're home and dry. We'll win an overall majority if that happens. I mean, hallelujah. When I saw that statistic, I was bloody delighted. You know, 75% of people say that we would, I think it was 80% of, I'm thinking of 2 polls now, one in which they tested whether the DA would do a better job, and one in which they tested whether people would support me. Those were 2 different polls. But 75% say, yes, we would do a better job. People vote against their interest all the time, Howie. That's why you have a democracy, so that when people discover they voted against their interest, they can change their vote in 5 years. Because people are fallible, they make mistakes. And slowly but surely, that racial identity pull of politics is changing. Now, racial identity is very, very strong in South Africa. There's no question about it. It's very strong. But we are the one party who says we have to build an alternative vision of the future. An alternative vision of the future, which is what we're doing. And we're pulling people from every background into trying to build that alternative vision. And lots of people are supporting it for the very first time. It takes time. It's a bloody miracle that it's happening at the pace it is, Howie.
So, Helen, can you win? Is it a
Yeah,
possibility that you can achieve an absolute majority in these elections? And what are the polls, your internal polls, what are they telling you?
look, I always go by the numbers. I'm a big numbers person. I like to know what the numbers say. On the projections of the turnout modeling based on the last election and the by-elections, we will get an outright majority if 490,000 Joburg residents who are South African citizens register and vote DA on both ballots. If that happens, we win 50% plus. Now, the highest number that has ever come out to vote for the DA in Joburg was 481,000. That's a gap of 9,000 votes. Of course, that's possible. Our biggest enemy is people who don't go and vote, don't bother to register. In the halfway house constituency, where there are huge numbers of DA supporters, in that constituency, there's 60,800 voters who would probably vote DA who are not registered. That is our biggest problem, Howie. People who haven't got a clue what's going on, who don't know how achievable it is if only they register and vote.
So, what do we say to the people watching? Because many of them will have children who are not registered, or siblings who are not registered, or parents who maybe are registered but don't go out to vote. What is your message to them?
Message is you may never, ever, ever complain and say a single thing if you haven't used your power to demand accountability and to elect people who can do the job. I get so angry with people who don't vote. I don't even think they're worthy of citizenship.
So, are we saying one of the things that we're asking people to do tonight, whether they
No,
vote for you?
490,000, 490,000, not 410,000. Sorry, I just saw Beverly Gurwitz put something on there and I said, no, 490,000.
But Helen, one of the things are we asking people tonight, whether they vote for you or not, they have to make sure that everyone is registered and everyone goes out and vote. That is their moral obligation, and that is their obligation as a citizen of South Africa. Otherwise, they must shut up, never complain, not interested in them. They can go footsack somewhere else.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so many people say to me, I'm not interested in politics. I said, well, you know what? Politics is very interested in you. The success or failure of Joburg is a political choice. And you have the power to make that choice. How the hell wouldn't you use it? And I'm not one of these people who say it doesn't matter who you vote for as long as you vote. It matters like hell who you vote for. And what you need to do is just ask yourself some serious questions. Which party has the policies that can make Joburg a success? Which party has the experience of turning around ANC administrations and making them successful? Which party has the depth of expertise that is able to achieve that? I mean, it is just no contest, Howie. No contest. And if people split the DA's vote amongst all kinds of tiny parties, then most likely the ANC will be the biggest party, and then all the smaller parties will go under the ANC's wing, as they have in the province, and as they have now in Joburg, and they'll get more of the same. A revolving door at the mayor's office, instability, corruption, and chaos. People know what that does. So you might like, let's say, Zongezo Zibi sounds good, and you think, well, it'll be good to have him in there. Every vote for him takes a vote from the DA. And every vote for him makes it more likely the ANC will be able to put together a coalition, and that Rise Mzansi will run along and be good coalition partners to the ANC. That's what's happened in the province. And now they've brought the EFF in, and they haven't said a peep. So now you've got Dunga, the EFF, running the finances of Gauteng. I mean, that's what you get. You know, all the good people and true in up here in Westcliff and all of those places. I mean, the only places where these tiny parties got the big lots of votes was, you know, the upper classes of Joburg, who are nicely insulated in their little bubbles. you know, in those kinds of places, what they were doing was actually voting for Lesotho because those smaller parties put Lesotho back, and that's what they got. There are only two parties that can be the biggest in Joburg, only two, Howie. One is the DA, one is the ANC. That is the choice, and it matters who's the biggest party. And as I say, if we can pull out the biggest pull out that we've ever done, get people registered and voting, we only need 9,000 above our highest watermark in the past, and we're over 50%. What's not to believe in?
So, Helen, I want to digress for a moment to talk about registration, because you can't vote unless you're registered. You can go onto the IEC's website, elections.org.za, and you can put in your ID number and confirm that you're registered. If you are registered in one location for the last election, you will still be registered there. If you are not registered, you can either register online at the IEC's website, or we have a registration weekend coming up at the end of June. What are the dates in June for our registration weekend?
I think it's 2021st. I think
I
those are
think
the
it
dates,
is.
20 and
I think
21st.
I think it's 20 and 21st. But no one in the city should not be registered to vote. And come election day, Helen cares who you vote for. I don't care who you vote for. I used to run the country's elections. I was with the IEC for 6 years. I just need you to go and vote. So let's get back, because in the unlikely event that you don't get 50%, you seem to have pissed off a few people along the way.
Of course.
Explain to us your beef, first of all, with Herman Mashaba. Because if you ask someone what does Herman Mashaba believe in, he seems to believe in kicking out illegal immigrants, and his other principle is Helen Zille should never be mayor of Johannesburg. Explain this beef that you have with Herman, please.
Okay, I just want to rewind a little bit. I'll get to the beef with Herman Mashaba. You can go to the IEC, but you can also go to check.da.org.za, check.da.org.za. And I see my colleague Daniel Shea is on, a very good councillor. We're damn lucky to have him. And Daniel Shea said if you contact your councillor, if he's like Daniel Shea, he'll help you register. So that's
Daniel,
what you can
please put in the web address on the Zoom chat, and as well as YouTube and Facebook as well. And so do that again.
check.da.org.za. Check.da.org.za. Yeah.
Cool.
Right. Now, Herman Mashaba, look. Before the 2016 election, I spent many hours trying to persuade Herman Mashaba to be our mayoral candidate for Johannesburg. And he was resistant, and I must learn from when people are resistant, I mustn't persevere too hard. Anyway, he became our mayoral candidate, and I soon realized there was a problem. There's a huge problem when people haven't imbibed the values deeply enough so that they know where the lines are. Now, if you read the book on Julius Malema, that was written by Paulie van Wyk and Micah Reddy, and this chapter, I think it is 22 to 25, tells you exactly how Herman Mashaba, while he was the DA mayor, I'm afraid, enabled the capture of the roads agency, the Joburg Roads Agency, and then City Power, and then the huge fleet tender of AfriRent enabled their capture by Julius Malema and others, tenderpreneurs, to the point that he came to be known as the EFF's mayor. He spent more time with the EFF's caucus than he did with his own. And he just did everything that Julius Malema wanted. If Julius Malema said there's going to be a land invasion, you leave it alone, he did. If Julius Malema says you've got to bring Floyd Brink, my crony from the housing department in Limpopo, who was with me on all the corrupt dealings in On Point Engineering in Limpopo, you've got to make him chief operating officer, Herman did. And he thought that that was coalition management. And it's not coalition management. Coalition management is not staying in power at all costs. It is knowing where to draw the line and drawing it. And if anybody goes to that book and reads that, they will see exactly. Now, um, in 2019, when the party was falling apart and I'd already retired, I was, on my way to do something completely else. I started a podcast, I've done a whole lot of things, and the DA started unraveling. A whole lot of people approached me and asked me to come back and stand to be the chair of the Federal Council, which I did. Simultaneously with that, I won that election. Simultaneously with that, the ANC brought a motion of no confidence in Herman Mashaba in Johannesburg. And because I was chair of this Federal Council, which is the equivalent of the Secretary General, the people came to speak to me from our caucus in Joburg and said, we cannot possibly defend Herman Mashaba. He's become the EFF's mayor. We can get no services in our wards. Every time we try to get them, he calls us racist. He says that we're not interested in delivering in services in poor communities, which we are, but we also have to look after the goose that lays the golden egg now and again. And he just became completely race obsessed. And they said, we cannot vote for him. So I said, no, you have to vote for him. You absolutely have to, because he's our candidate. And whether or not we like it, whether or not we think it's a mistake, you have to vote for him. Anyway, he got wind of the fact that the ANC's motion was likely to succeed. He got wind of the fact and he resigned before he could be pushed. That's what happened. And then he jumped out and made it a big thing about race and all of that. And then accused me of conspiring with the South African Institute of Race Relations to get him out, which I would never, ever do in my life. I would never turn against a DA mayor, even if I fundamentally disagreed with him. I wouldn't support a motion of no confidence in them unless they'd profoundly broken the law. So he got this complete mishugas in his head that I had engineered his expulsion, or that I was going to push him out the party, which I never was. And he's got now this mind virus in his head, which is based on absolutely nothing. And then he comes out with an allegation that I agreed with the ANC that I was going to protect them from a corruption investigation of some ridiculous amount of money, which I would never, ever in a million years do. Everybody knows that I would never do that. I would never protect the ANC and try to get them into power. So he completely lost the plot, as in 100%.
So, Helen, he's clearly not at this point in time a potential coalition partner. Is Gayton McKenzie a potential coalition partner for you? Or more specifically, Kenny Kuneni, so he's the mayoral candidate for the Patriotic Alliance in Johannesburg.
I hate you ask me all these questions, Howie, because I sound like I'm bad-mouthing everybody. But if I tell you my honest opinion, people must realize that politics draws extraordinary opposites. Some people go into politics because they're absolutely committed to getting political architecture of a country right that can sustain freedom and growing prosperity. That's why some people are there. Other people are there because it's the easiest way to make money. And if you look at the mafia in America and the extent to which criminals capture politicians, the extent to which criminals capture politicians to do their bidding, then you will see why it's not just a matter of I disagree with you or I won't work with you. It's got nothing to do with personal relationships. It's got something to do with profound principles. And everybody knows Kenny Kuneni. I don't have to even go into it.
Okay.
I don't want to badmouth him, but it's been all over the newspapers.
So let's move on to your actual campaign. And we've seen you scuba diving in potholes. We've seen you in rowboats. We've seen images of you with a jet ski next to you. Enormously entertaining. And when you look on social media and you count the numbers, I think the one in the pothole, when last I looked on Instagram alone, had 3.4 million views. It's certainly getting a lot of traction. But traction doesn't necessarily mean votes. Describe to us your campaign as it's unfolding, and is this translating? Does the humor, the political messaging, the comedy, does it actually translate to people just being entertained, or does it translate into people actually saying, yes, I can vote for that person? Or is it the Donald Trump strategy to be on the front page of every newspaper every single day, so there's no room for anyone else?
You make it sound as if I'm kind of hogging the specials at the supermarket, which I'm absolutely not. I mean, everyone must make their own room in politics. That's how it works. But your question is very revealing, Howie, because you've said the entertaining and the funny videos. Do you know that for every funny video I do 10 serious ones? The serious ones get zero traction. No one knows about them, nor do you, not even you, and you follow politics. We write serious op-eds in the newspaper and nothing happens. We've done about 5 or 6 funny videos out of the scores that we've done. And those are the ones that grab people. Those are the ones that get to people. Those are the ones that are seen everywhere. And those are the ones that get people talking about the campaign. So you've got to have both. You've got to have both. And as I've said, and I put the formula up very early in the campaign, I said we cannot only do funny videos, we have to do serious videos. And the ratio must be about 10-1. And that's what it is. So we do everything. The first thing is that you've got to be everywhere. Now there's an air war and a ground war. All of the stuff on social media is part of the air war. But just as important in a political campaign is the ground war. Walking along the streets, knocking on doors, getting people's details, making sure we can contact them, make sure they're registered, and bring them out on election day. And Daniel will tell you, and other colleagues will tell you, how much work is going into that right now. And in every single one of the 5,000 complexes, gated villages that we have in Joburg, we're looking for a complex champion to help us with the ground war there. It's a huge undertaking. It's not a small undertaking. And it is a massive campaign to back up our offer to the voters.
So tell us, when you do go and you knock on doors in Alexander Township or Soweto or Houghton or Greenside, what are the people saying to you? What are they actually telling them? What is the principal issue that is in their minds that will determine whether to vote for you or not?
Well, the most important thing is that we're getting an unbelievably warm reception everywhere we go, except in Lenasia. It's the only place that I've had hostility is Lenasia. Otherwise, everywhere else, every Shisanyama, from Orange Farm to Zandspruit, I've had the most warm reception. And I think the place I've been to most in this election campaign is Alexandra. I've been there by far more than any other place. And I'm getting to know people there. I've worked in the Helen Joseph Women's Hostel there, which has the most horrific set of circumstances. And we've got good candidates there, and they're working very hard there. So people say to us the same everywhere. We want decent basic services. We want them to be affordable. We want this place to work. They just want things to work. They don't want potholes in the road. I mean, Alexandra is terrible. And it's because the sewage running down the street and because the sewage eats away the tar. So the potholes are unbelievable. I don't know if there's ever refuse removal, but there are goats walking all over the street, eating sort of half-rotting refuse. And then, people are sweeping it into the drains, and then the drains overflow. And oh, my goodness, it's one bit of dysfunction next to the other. And it's so massively overcrowded that, it's hardly sustainable. The challenges are enormous, absolutely enormous. And I see them, and people want us to resolve them. My big problem is that people will have expectations that are too high. I don't know if you saw that little video that was made in Alexandra quite spontaneously when I was chatting to this man in the street. And I chat to lots of people in the street. And the guys who are with me often take videos of it, which often then go to our social media pages. I'm chatting to this guy, and I'm chatting to him about the problems in Alexandra. And he says to me, don't worry, Helen's coming up from Cape Town. She's going to. So I said, oh, is Helen coming up from Cape Town? He said, yes. I said, where's Helen? She said, no, she's in Cape Town. I said, are you sure she's in Cape Town? He says, yes, she's in Cape Town, but she's coming up to Joburg. I then said to him, she's right in front of you now. And he went, what? He got such a fright and he took it. But it was touching that he didn't know it was me. And he was telling me so spontaneously how the problems were going to be solved. My worry is that people are going to have very high expectations and it's going to take a long while to turn around Joburg. But we are going to turn it around.
So I think a lot of people watching tonight will want to help in some way. They could be their captain of their townhouse. They may be willing to go drop leaflets. They may be willing to work on telephones. I don't think we stamp anything and send out envelopes anymore, but they may be willing to help in so many ways. But it's often difficult for political parties to utilize volunteers. So if there are people watching tonight who want to volunteer, who really want to help, who do they contact? How do they do it?
Right.
And how do you absorb them and make sure that you utilize them effectively?
Well, the best way if you want to get involved usefully is to join your local branch. We've got a branch in almost every ward in Joburg, and you can join your branch. So your ward councillor, if it's a DA ward councillor, will know how to join your branch. And there's Errol Anstey. He's another of my colleagues. Yeah. So
And I
you
see
can.
Glenys Breitenbach's been posting as well along the way. So you've got lots of supporters online tonight.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. All my colleagues. That's fabulous. Well, the point is that join your branch because by the 2nd of June, they have to have the rosters in for the registration weekend. We have to have a front of house at every single registration point. We have to have people observing, managing, taking drivers to take people to the polls. That's one thing that you can do, and your branch will find a way of utilizing you, especially in the canvassing and in the run up to the campaign itself. If you want to be a complex champion, that is a fantastically helpful thing to do. Like I did in my little complex in Pinelands when I was still in Cape Town in 2024. What we did there was I just made sure that everybody was registered and everybody knew that the election was coming and all of that, because they don't allow political parties into these gated communities. So if people live there, they can help us enormously from the inside. And they do that very, very well. Whereas Indigenous Africans come from a harsh past that nobody has sincerely apologized. Or sorry, what is this? Let me just see the Zizipo message.
No, let's complete this and then
Okay.
we'll get on to questions from the audience, I promise.
Okay, good, 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 good. I just want to see how much battery juice I've got here. So you can choose to be a complex champion, which is a very, very good thing. And then we've also got a fund for a care campaign if people don't want to contribute directly to politics. We've got a fund for a care campaign. And please also contact your counsellor or write to Daniel Shea or somebody, and they will tell you how you can contribute financially to a care campaign.
So let's try and make it as easy as possible for people. Say I want to be a complex champion. Is there
Yeah.
an email address I can send something through to
Yes.
say, this is where I live, I want to be a complex champion, or I live in this neighborhood, I'm happy to go drop off leaflets or go talk to people about the party? Who, practically, physically, what do people do?
Okay. You write to this email address, Zille for mayor, but the four is a number four, not FOR. So it's Zille, Zille, numerical four, mayor at da.org.za.
I'm going to ask some people watching, and I see Beverly Jacobson has already done it, and the Juice Report has already done it. So we're posting that email address there. And if you want to volunteer, this is a great way to do it. Zille, the number 4, then mayor at da.org.za. And let's get those people who want to be involved to help you to become mayor of Johannesburg. Let's make sure we actually activate it. And don't wait till tomorrow because you're going to forget. Do it now. Do it right now if you want to actually help the DA and help Helen in this task. Helen,
Gosh,
we're going to
Howie, you
move.
sound like my husband. That's the distance you've traveled since we first met in the cafe down
No,
the
no,
road.
no, don't worry. I will make the same offer to all the political parties, including your opponents. Don't worry. Uh, I,
Your
I'm an
audience is
equal.
too smart for that, Howie.
I'm an equal opportunity political activist. Uh,
Okay.
But Helen, before we move
It's
on
called the
to
twee gatjakkels in Afrikaans.
before we move on to lots of questions, hopefully from the audience, and we're going to give short questions and short answers, I want to just talk about the DA prospects in other municipalities. How is the DA looking in the other metros? Is Cape Town safe? We think that Durban, eThekwini is going to be a very interesting election. Run us through some of the other metros and what your expectations are.
I think Cape Town will be safe, but we can never, ever be complacent, ever, in a proportional representation system. That's number one. We've got a really seriously good chance in Tshwane of being, well, we definitely will be the biggest party. Definitely we will be the biggest party.
Villiers-Brink is currently polling about 45%.
Yes, in that area. So, I mean, the biggest problem we have there is the Freedom Front Plus, actually. They eat into our voting base quite a lot there. So, but Villiers should be able to, well, he'll definitely be the biggest party. Whether we can get over 50 is the question there. In Nelson Mandela Bay, it also looks as if we'll be the biggest party, although the ANC is always stiff competition in Nelson Mandela Bay for obvious reasons. In eThekwini, the biggest party is Jacob Zuma's. The ANC has dropped to about 15%. Unbelievable. 15%. Jacob Zuma.
Some polls say as low as 8%.
Geez, I haven't seen those polls, but I mean, the ANC has been decimated by MK in KwaZulu-Natal. And our best chance is to go into a similar local coalition as we did in the provincial coalition, which we hold by a single seat, and that is the NFP seat. I think we could put together a coalition in Nelson Mandela Bay. So it's looking promising.
The Nelson Mandela Bay, the old Port Elizabeth for
Yes. Correct. So, those metros are looking positive. And you can imagine people now start talking about the DA winning metros as if it is, obvious and a foregone conclusion. It was unthinkable even 5 years ago. It was unthinkable even 5 years ago that we could be polling more than the ANC in Joburg, in eThekwini, in Tshwane, in Nelson Mandela Bay. Unthinkable, but we are. And if we were a white party, we wouldn't be anywhere near there, Howie, as even you can understand with the maths.
Helen, I'm going to tell you what the last question is of the evening, but I'm not going to ask you to answer it yet because we're going to do viewers' questions first. So if you're watching us on Facebook or watching us on Zoom or watching us on YouTube, this is your opportunity. Please post your questions for Helen now, and we're going to try and get as many in short questions, short answers. I see some people have written us an entire thesis. We're not going to read those, so please, short questions, short answers, and we want to get through as many of those as possible. By the way, if you're watching us on YouTube and you haven't clicked the like and subscribe button, please do so now. That's a favor that we ask of you. That just allows us to communicate better with you. So, Helen, the last question of the evening that we'll get to in about 15 minutes' time is I'm going to ask you why people should vote for you as mayor. That's going to be our last question that we pose to you in about 15 minutes' time. But I'm going to pose some of the questions that are coming in from members of the audience. One of which coming from Daniel Muller, and I think this is the second question we've had of its nature, and that relates to metro policing, and says, when will the DA advocate for doing its own reservists in the metro police since SAPS is not fixing the reservist issue?
The Metro Police in Joburg are so totally broken that we first have to get them functional before they can do anything. The most important thing the Metro Police have to do to get started is to enforce the bylaws. I spoke to the people in the municipal courts, the prosecutors in the municipal courts. They say they hardly function because the Metro Police don't prosecute the bylaws anymore. And you can see that everywhere. The bylaws are violated left, right, and center with no consequence. So I would love to get the Metro Police up and running like a functional, corruption-free unit, and then we can add the bells and whistles.
Okay. There are a lot of questions that are coming in that relating to foreign policy. I don't think you're not standing for mayor of Paris or Gaza City or New York, so I prefer to not discuss foreign policy with you. When you do wish to stand for the United Nations, I definitely will ask you those questions. One question about Julius Malema, and is he going to be prosecuted for Kill the Boer?
No, he isn't, because the Constitutional Court says it's not hate speech. Incredibly, but they do.
A question from Dylan says, can you expect the DA to be the biggest party in South Africa while continuing to ignore the role race plays in everyday life in South Africa?
Yes, we can be the biggest party. And we don't ignore race. We take it very, very seriously, but we don't make it the primary marker of the value of a human being. We know race has to be taken seriously, but we don't make race the primary marker of the value of the human being. How is it that we are polling as the biggest party in all the metros? And I can tell you, if we are the biggest party in Joburg, in Tshwane, in Ekurhuleni, we will win Gauteng in 2029, the most populous province. Yes.
Sharon is saying to us, are you planning on building a bigger DA presence on university campuses? She's on WITS and she's only sees the EFF there.
Yes, well, you see, we've tried to get a DASO branch, that's the DA Students Organization branch, going at WITS. It's an impossible environment for that. We are growing very well. We always win, amazingly enough, the Nelson Mandela Bay Metropolitan University's SRC elections. We always win it outright. It's just quite extraordinary. And it's about 85% black students there. So and at many of the technicons, we win those SRC elections. So it's quite extraordinary. But at WITS, it's the most inhospitable space for the DA's student organization. So what we do in an election campaign is we go and fish where the fish are. And if we do a lot of fishing at WITS, we'll enable far more EFF people to go and vote than DA people to go and vote. So I hope all the DA supporters at WITS will go in and illegal immigrants who are, what is this Zippo?
I'll post the questions. Don't worry.
Okay. She's come up so often that I want to answer some of her questions.
I will get to them.
So
But
I
for
hope
example,
all the WITS students who support the DA go out and register, but we're not having a registration table at WITS.
okay, so Mulungisi is asking a question about the Johannesburg Library. Do you think it will open again? And also a question about e-tolls. Are they coming back?
No, e-tolls are not coming back, number one. Number two, yes, the library will open, certainly under a DA administration.
Helen, this question has come up probably 4 or 5 times. People are worried about your security. Are you worried about your safety?
Well, I'm not one to go for bodyguards and things, but the DA did a safety assessment when I was nominated as the mayoral candidate, and they found that there was a credible risk because quite a few people have been assassinated, as you know, in Joburg. And now I've got some very, very good protection, and I'm very grateful to people who made that possible. Yes.
One person is asking about electricity in Ward 22. Do you know anything about that? Ask your councillors what's happening with the electricity in Ward 22 in Ekurhuleni.
Well, yeah, Ekurhuleni is different from Johannesburg, but I could certainly ask. Is anybody here from Ekurhuleni? Anybody on the any of my colleagues from Ekurhuleni?
And I see Ellen is asking about East London as well. I let's try stick to the things that maybe are within Helen's jurisdiction. Sol Cowan, who previously was an ANC member of the Johannesburg City Council, says, how do you justify the case that the City of Cape Town lost regarding overcharging or finding way to charge residents in Cape Town more than they should have been?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that they lost the case because it wasn't about overcharging. If you look at how rapid urbanization is and how much we're going to have to invest in infrastructure in the next couple of years, Jordan is projecting that and saying this is how we have to get ahead of the infrastructure curve. And he is trying to build a fund, which he already has. That's why we can spend 40 billion rand in the next 3 years on infrastructure in Cape Town. And he believes that it's fair to have a sliding scale between the richest properties and the poorest properties, because people who are very wealthy should contribute more to the infrastructure fund. And I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense. The choice is you can't force very poor people to pay. They're on indigency grants in any case. So we can't not invest in infrastructure, because if you don't invest in infrastructure, you're basically planning for failure. That's what you're doing. So that was his plan, to get enough money to meet all the infrastructure needs going into the future. And the court has turned him down. Now we are looking at possibly appealing that. But again, that's not my decision. That's going to be his decision and his lawyers. He's got a very good legal team. So let's see what happens. But it's for the very best reasons. He's trying to get ahead of the infrastructure curve, which is the only reason that Cape Town is still working when no other place is. It's because it has got and kept ahead of the infrastructure curve.
There's a question about the Johannesburg Art Gallery, which is now derelict and the artworks have moved out. I'd love to know if the Picasso still exists or if someone has pocketed it along the way. Do you think the Johannesburg Art Gallery will ever reopen again?
Look, I went there and I was shocked by what I saw. Not least of all that the security guards didn't look up from their cell phones once when I was wandering around there. Anyway.
So you may have taken the Picasso, who knows?
Who knows? I may have, eh? But
So,
I don't know if they've got the stuff back from South Korea or wherever it went to, those incredibly precious paintings. We want to save the Johannesburg Art Gallery. Whether it's salvageable in Joburg Park, I'm not sure.
So let's move on to a question from Zizipo. And she says, we are indigenous Africans, come from a harsh past, and nobody has sincerely apologized. All what we see is people obsessed with power. I have cousins in Cape Town, Kalanga, Guguletu, and Nyanga, who have not seen any changes despite the DAs governing there.
Right. Well, I lived right opposite Langa. Right opposite Langa. I could see the roof of the school that my husband volunteers as a maths teacher from my house in Langa. Langa has got water. Langa has got reliable electricity. Langa has a functional police station. Langa has tarred roads. Langa has clinics. Langa has squatter shacks still, although we have built up all of those houses along the N2. And the reason why people are still in shacks at the end of that strip is because many of the people there do not qualify for a second house, because they've had a house before and they sold it or they're letting it out to others. And obviously people can't qualify for a second house from the state. If this lady can mention one service that the local government is supposed to deliver, and the provincial government, one single service that is supposed to be delivered and that is not being delivered, I'd be very interested to hear. Ditto Guguletu. Which other place did she mention?
She have to find it again, but it was Guguletu, Khayelitsha, Langa.
Khayelitsha, yes, there's Site C in Khayelitsha is in a very, very bad way. But in Site C in Khayelitsha, there should never, ever have been any human settlement on it, because it gets flooded every year. So the critical thing is that people have to be moved off there. But otherwise, Khayelitsha is doing very well.
So, Helen, we have one question about crime in Johannesburg. Is there a plan relating to the Metro Police and crime? And can crime be brought under control?
Crime can never be brought under control without a functional criminal justice system. And that is a pipeline. The best deterrent for criminals is to know that they will be caught and punished. And that requires a corruption-free expert police service with really good detectives who know what they're doing, who can investigate, who can gather evidence, who can prepare dockets for court, And it's all got to be digitized because currently these dockets disappear. And I believe they don't want to digitize so that they can continue disappearing. So once you've got a good police service, you've got to have a good prosecuting authority that actually can put together a case that can stand up in court. And then you have to have an independent judiciary that makes sensible decisions on the basis of legal evidence alone. Those are the three things that you've got to have: police, prosecution, judges, the whole system. And Metro Police are only supposed to be doing three things: bylaw enforcement, which they're not doing at all; traffic control, as far as I can see, is just holding some street, what you call them, street blockades now in various places. And the third is crime prevention, which is non-existent. In Cape Town, they've built a Metro Police service to such an extent that they are now challenging the National Police Service to take over some of their functions. And we're going to the Constitutional Court on that to argue that it's irrational, given the state of police, not to delegate those functions to a functional Metro Police service. But Joburg does not have a functional police service. And so at the Madlanga Commission, what that has to result in is a sweep out of the top brass of the SAPS, a complete sweep out of the top brass of the SAPS. And we've got to try and get rid of the corruption in the SAPS. You know, the thought of the minister actually even getting money from some of the top criminals and the big five criminal cartels in South Africa is just shocking. And then almost all the police generals were in their pocket. Now, you're never going to come to grips with crime in a country where the police force looks like what has been revealed at the Madlanga Commission.
So, Helen, before I ask the final question of the evening, there's still thousands of people watching us across the three platforms, and I'm going to ask people to leave your message. So if I could ask everyone, no matter which platform you're watching on, to actually leave a message for Helen, positive, negative, inspired, not inspired. We really want to hear from you and want to hear
everything. I'm very
your opinion. So please take this moment to do it. But Terry had a comment, and she said you shouldn't be retired, you should be rehired. And this is a job interview because you're applying to us to run our city on our behalf, and you're asking us for the vote, which brings us to our final question of the evening. Tell us why you deserve to be mayor of Johannesburg.
Because I've got the passion, the energy, the experience, the understanding, the knowledge of everything local government related. And I am going to put my all into it for 5 years if people elect me.
What does your first 100 days look like?
And also, this is critical, I've got the great team with depth of experience and ability and know-how. And we're a team. It's a team effort. It's never an individual.
Cool. So your first 100 days?
First 100 days, well, the first 30 days is going to be involved very much in putting together an adjustment budget. And I don't know where we're going to find the money from, but that's what we're going to have to do. And then the next thing, we are going to have to speak very closely to the Johannesburg task team in the National Treasury, because they've studied it in depth, Joburg's finances, and they will be prepared to help us and support us. The next thing I will do is bring in the Auditor General, who will take us through the audit very carefully so we can see the extent to which they've discovered where the bodies are buried. Then I will bring in a forensic auditor with all the evidence that we've been collecting over a while about where bodies are buried, and we will go after them. We've developed an app which enables people to report corruption without ever being traced, which is a very necessary thing in this context. Then we will reform the boards of the entities and make sure they are packed with expertise and competence and ability in each of the spheres that they will be responsible for. And then we will get very close to the Vulindlela project and make full use of the utilities reform program so that we can get the massive incentives that they are offering to ring fence the finances for the utilities. That would be my priority list.
So, Helen, I want to just leave everyone once again to repeat something that we've spoken before. If you've liked what you've heard tonight, then Helen cannot do it without you. Maybe you don't like what you've heard tonight, and that's okay. But if you've liked what you've heard tonight, you have to get involved. And that means volunteer, donate some money, donate money, if not directly to a party, to a good cause. Go out into the streets, speak to your neighbors, make sure that your children, your parents, your siblings, your friends are registered. Be part of the democratic process in South Africa. Because if you don't have your say, someone else is going to go and speak on your behalf. And then you deserve exactly what you get. Helen Zille, you've given us so much of your time this evening. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to speak to you. Best of luck in your election campaign. We've got a long few months ahead. The elections are now scheduled for the 4th of November, but I have a sense this isn't the last time we'll be speaking to this audience between now and then. But thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you for being so forthright in all of your opinions and your frankness with our audience this evening.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Going from the serious to the mundane, our next webinar in a few weeks' time, bizarrely, is going to be on GLP-1 weight loss and peptides. You can't go to a dinner party without someone telling you they're on peptides. So we're going to have a set of 3 doctors on our panel talking about Ozempic and Mounjaro and retatrutide and every other peptide you've ever heard of in your life. And we're going to give you frank, honest answers about that. And that's going to be the next thing that we're going to be speaking about as well. But this is the first of a series of what we hope will be interesting political discussions that we'll talk about in the run-up to the November the 4th municipal elections. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Helen, thank you so much for your time. So appreciated.
Such a pleasure, Howie. Thanks. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.